Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at conditional sentences. Conditional sentences scare a lot of people, but they really shouldn't. It's a very simple way in which we give extra information in English. The important thing to remember is basically it's just knowing 4 different patterns, and they're 4 different verb tense patterns. We're going to go through each one. There are 4 common conditional forms in English, and we call them the zero, the first, the second, and the third conditionals. All 4 conditionals are composed of 2 clauses, the conditional or if clause and the result clause. When a conditional sentence starts with the conditional or if clause, it's separated from the result clause by a comma. If the sentence begins instead with the result, it's not separated from the conditional part or the if clause. Looking first at the zero conditional. The zero conditional is also sometimes called a real conditional. It's used to talk about something that is generally or always true. It can be used, for example, to explain scientific facts. The zero conditional just explains that if A is true, then B is also true. The basic construction, we use present simple in the if clause, and we also use present simple in the result clause. Here are a couple of examples. If we make a profit, all the employees receive a bonus. The journey to London takes 30 minutes if you take the train from King's Cross. If can often be replaced by when in a zero conditional. When it snows, I don't drive my car. It's also possible to use some other present tenses in certain circumstances. If it's snowing when I wake up tomorrow, I'm staying home. This is present continuous and present continuous. It's much less common, but in this case, it helps to express the sense of excitement that this person is expressing. So this shows, in this case, how intensely I want this to happen. All right, now let's look at the first conditional. The first conditional is used to talk about the consequences of future events which are probable or likely. The if clause describes the future event, and the result clause explains the likely or probable consequence of this action. The first conditional can only refer to future events. The basic construction is present simple in the conditional clause and will in the result clause. So looking at some examples. If he passes the exam, I will be happy. If I win the lottery, I will buy a house in San Francisco. I will look for a new job if my boss doesn't give me a pay raise. In each of these cases, we expect that the result of the conditional clause, the result of the if clause, is going to be true, is probable, it's likely. It's not certain, but it's more probable than not. In a first conditional, if can sometimes be replaced by when or unless. When I see Kiara, I'll tell her about the new project. I will tell her. Unless she finishes the evaluation today, we won't be able to present the results at the meeting. Won't, will not. One special case that we use the first conditional for is to use the imperative in the result clause. So we can also use the first conditional form to give commands or instructions with an if clause, and we use an imperative form in the result. Remember, the imperative is just the verb. It's just the verb by itself. So, 2 examples. If you see Roberta, tell her to come to my office. Take an umbrella if it's going to rain. So, in these cases, the result has the imperative form. So that is going to be what the result will be if the first part is true. And it's giving it as a direction to somebody else. The second conditional. The second conditional is different from the first because the speaker is giving his or her opinion about the situation. So my opinion in a second conditional is different from my opinion in the first conditional. The second conditional is used to talk about future events, which are unlikely, improbable, impossible, or unrealistic. The if clause describes the future event, the situation, and the result clause explains the hypothetical consequences of that action. Again, the second conditional can only refer to future events. The basic construction is past simple in the if clause and would plus the verb in the result clause. Some examples. If he failed this exam, he would fail the class. If I won the lottery, I would buy a house in San Francisco. I would look for a new job if my boss didn't give me a pay raise. So, in each of these cases, my opinion of the circumstance is different. So, when we're looking at the first conditionals, my sense is he's a good student. In a second conditional, he's not such a good student. If I win the lottery, I'm very excited, but perhaps I'm unrealistic because the odds against me in entering the lottery are very high. So a second conditional is more realistic in that case. So if I won the lottery, I've read the back of the lottery ticket and I understand that the chance of my winning the lottery is not very good. So I'm going to say it in this case in a second conditional. If I won the lottery, I would buy a house in San Francisco. I would look for a new job if my boss didn't give me a pay raise. Now this is a little funny because it's using the negative and it's actually expressing the fact that I think that my boss will give me a pay raise, but I'm doing it through the negative. So if my boss didn't give me a pay raise, I would look for a new job. Now, the third conditional is completely different. The third conditional is not looking forward. The third conditional is looking back. The third conditional is used to discuss something that would have happened if events in the past had been different. So if something changed in the past, the result would have been different. The third conditional only refers to the past, and it only refers to actions that are hypothetical and impossible because they did not happen. It's often used to express regret. The if clause describes the past event, which didn't happen, and the result clause explains the hypothetical consequences of that action. The basic way that we construct the third conditional is past perfect, had plus the past participle in the if clause, and would plus the present perfect in the result clause. Some examples. If I had known the company was failing, I wouldn't have made the investment. I didn't know, so I made the investment, and it was bad. You would have met my brother if you had come to my party, but you didn't come to my party, so you didn't meet him. If I had studied harder at university, I could have been a lawyer. I didn't study hard, so now I am not a lawyer. The thing to really get is that conditionals express probability. You can look at it as being the zero conditional expresses 100% or 0%. Always or never. This is something that we use to express a rule, something which is always true or always false. The first conditional, we can start to divide our sense of probability. We have 100%, 0%. Now everything between that will be covered by the first and the second conditional. We can think of the first conditional as being everything over 50%, but not 100, and the second conditional being everything which is under 50%, but not 0. So, the first conditional, above 50%, second conditional, below 50%, both of those talking about real future events. The third conditional, you have to think of as 0, because it didn't happen. It's a past event that did not happen. Okay, we had a special case for the first conditional. We also have a special case for the second conditional. This is how we give advice using the second conditional. So we give advice in a special way, which is technically, theoretically impossible. This is to say, if I were you, I would do this. If I were you, I would do that. Grammatically speaking, of course, if I was a sailor, if I was a dancer, whatever would be grammatically correct. But now, in this case, because you're using it not to talk about yourself, but you're using it to talk about somebody else, you're going to actually use this special construction. If I were you, I would take the job. All right, so let's look at a couple of examples. Think about which conditional is each of these sentences. The first one, I will call you if I come back early. The second, if I were rich, I would travel around the world. She wouldn't have missed the train if she had woken up earlier. So, I will call you if I come back early. You can also remember, turn this around. If I come back early, I will call you. That is a first conditional. If I were rich, I would travel around the world is a second conditional. She wouldn't have missed the train if she had woken up earlier, third conditional. All right, looking at some more examples, figure out what word you need to put in there to make this correct. If we meet at 9:30, we, plenty of time. All right, if we meet, meet, present simple. So this is a first conditional. If we meet at 9:30, we will have plenty of time. Lisa would find the milk if she in the fridge. So Lisa would find, the verb is find, would find, second conditional. So Lisa would find the milk if she looked in the fridge. Past simple. Looked. Lisa would find the milk if she looked in the fridge. The manager would have canceled the order if she, her to. The manager would have canceled. Would plus the present perfect. The manager would have canceled the order if she had asked her to. Third conditional. If you spoke louder, your classmates, you. If you spoke louder, spoke, past tense of to speak, irregular past tense. If you spoke louder, your classmates would understand you. Second conditional. Okay, one thing we want to think about is that we also can use other modal verbs in conditionals. We most commonly use will and would, but sometimes we can use may, might, can, could, must, or should. If I have enough money, I will go to Berlin next summer. So this is a first conditional, and this says, if I have enough money, I will go to Berlin. So if A, then certainly B. If I have enough money, same beginning, I can go to Berlin next summer. In this case, can indicates that it's an option. It's my choice, I get to decide, and it's likely, it's probable. Let's look at that in contrast to the next one. If I have enough money, I could go to Berlin next summer. This means I'm likely to have enough money, but I'm not likely to choose Berlin above other options. So I more likely will go to Paris or Copenhagen. Who knows? But Berlin is probably less likely. It's certainly less likely than in the second sentence there. I can go to Berlin. If I have enough money, I may go to Berlin next summer. Similar, it's an option. I might go somewhere else. It's my choice. And it's rather likely. It's not certain. It's not like will. It's not as intense, but it's a little more probable than the next option here. If I have enough money, I might go to Berlin next summer. I have an option. It's my choice, but it's not likely. It's not likely. It's even less likely than the last page when we looked at could. All right, some more modal verbs. If I have enough money, I should go to Berlin next summer. So it's likely, and there is a reason. I should go. There's a reason for me to go. If you have enough money, now look, I have to change it in this case to use must. If you have enough money, you must go to Berlin next summer. So it's likely that you'll have enough money. And there's a reason to go, in my opinion, and I'm telling you this. You could maybe make it about yourself, but it's much more likely that this is something that you would use in giving a suggestion to somebody else. All right. Looking at the second conditionals, we can also use some of those same modals, but not all of them. If I had enough money, I could go to Berlin next summer. It's an option. It's medium likely, you might say. But remember, this is a second conditional, so I've told you that the if clause is under 50%. If I had enough money, I might go to Berlin next summer. This is an option. It doesn't sound that likely, so it's not likely. And it's not likely that I will have enough money to do it. If I had enough money, I should go to Berlin next summer. There's a strong reason for me to go there, but I probably won't have the money. Notice we don't use can, may, or must in a second conditional. All right, all of this. Why is this important? This is important because conditionals are powerful. They give us a lot of information in just by the choice of our construction. When I choose to use a first instead of a second, or a second instead of a first, then I already know something. I already have information about the opinion of the speaker. So they give extra information just by making the smallest change to a sentence. And so I hope that was clear to you. And any other things you want to know about conditional sentences, go to Unblock Your English on the Pinterest board. So that's pinterest.com/unblockyourenglish. All right?